Hi, I'm Dave Dawson of Dawson Precision. This is the next installment in our videos we should have made a long time ago series. You will not be needing a hammer like this. The first gun we're going to do is a Glock Gen 4 Model 17. As always, the first thing you want to do is make sure the gun is clear. So make sure there's no magazine in the mag well. Pull the slide back, physically look in the chamber. Slide down, point the gun in a safe direction, and pull the trigger. Okay, we're going to go ahead and remove the slide. We're going to move the recoil system, barrel. Okay, now we're ready to disassemble the sights. Okay, we're going to go ahead and we're going to put the slide in the vise, clamp it down. Now, this gun we're going to put a fixed rear in. In the fixed rear, in our rear sight, we offer a nylon tip punch that we make, and that works real good to knock this sight out. So we're just going to tap that sight out. And you see what I'm doing here? Let me get my hand out of the way. The sight comes out. And didn't destroy it. It's still good to go back in if you ever decide you want to put it back in. Okay, so now the slide is prepped and it's ready to go ahead and fit the sights. All right. We're going to go ahead and fit the rear one first. Now, the reason that I did that big hammer thing is I can't tell you how many sights we get back here that look like somebody used that hammer. So what I want you to do is know that you can do a press fit on a sight, but you have to use a little finesse, and it really doesn't take that much force. You're going to use a good, strong Loctite and a press fit, and that's really all you need to worry about. You'll still be able to bump the sight around a little bit, but it's not going to be... what I don't want you to do is I don't want you to form fit the sight, which could ruin the slide and the sight by beating the heck out of it. So we're going to show you how to fit the sight. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a little test fit, okay? And typically that sight should go in about halfway before it starts getting tight, okay? So if you'll look at this one. Now we even have a fit arrow. Glock, it's not that critical because the dovetail kind of goes wide, narrow, wide. That's how they do it to retain the polymer sights that they make. So the really only critical fit's on the middle of this dovetail. So what we're going to do is we're going to slide it in, test fit. That's real close, so we're going to tap that sight in, just see how hard it is to go in there. Okay? And actually, that right there, as soon as it went to that hard stop, I know I've got to adjust that sight dovetail. So we're going to tap it back out. And I'm going to use some tools that I know that you guys will have. You're going to have to bear with me because I'm blind and I'm going to need to put my optic on. So basically all we're going to use here is just a small triangle file. Now, what I want you to remember is all dovetails have different angles or pitches to it. So what you need to do is when you file on that dovetail, you need to file so that the file's not creating a new angle. It needs to stay flat to the dovetail. So you want to make sure that when you're setting it on the dovetail that you're following that whole flat surface. Okay, so what we're going to do, the nice thing about a blued sight is typically it marks where it wants material removed. So what we're going to do is we're just going to dress that a little bit in that spot that it says it wants the material removed. And I'm going to lay that file. Let me see if I can get that right there. All right. I'm going to lay that file. Hold on, I'm working with you, on the same angle as that dovetail, okay? So I'm just going to work it just a little bit. And I'm being careful not to dig into the top side of it, all right? And just take your time. And if you're looking, you're seeing I'm maintaining that file at that same angle. Now, I'm using this file because a triangle needle file is something that most people have. However, that's really not the file that we use here. We do offer a 60-degree dovetail file. Now, the reason that we use 60 degree is because we can pitch that dovetail file at any angle we want. Let me get under here to accommodate wherever that dovetail is. And typically, there aren't any dovetails that are less than 60 degrees on any gun sight that I've ever seen. I've seen 65, 71, and 74 degrees, but I've never seen any go 50 or 55 degrees. So this is the file that we typically use, but I'm not going to use this file. I'm going to go ahead and use one that most people would have. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to lay that right there. I keep looking up because I got a camera up here. I'm going to let you guys see. Let me get in the picture here. All right. And you'll notice that I'm only filing it in one direction, okay? When you use a file only cuts in one direction, and rolling it back the other way tends to wipe off the top of the teeth. So I'm trying to maybe teach you guys how to use a file too. Maybe you already know. And then all I'm going to do, I'm going to take enough material off, and believe me, a little bit goes a long way on a dovetail. All right, see that? Now that sight's going halfway in. We're going to go ahead and see if we can tap it in the rest of the way. You know, I could make that go, but I don't want to make that go. I'm gonna take that back out of there. Now, the reason I use aluminum punches on everything is for two reasons. First of all, you don't need to hit a sight in any harder than an aluminum punch, and any harder force than an aluminum punch can provide. So I know that sometimes you're going to have to use steel punches to get the sights out, but a properly fit sight, it's just a good tight press fit that typically you can tap in and it'll stay there. I also recommend strongly that you use a good permanent Loctite. I have a lot of people say, well, what if I ever want to take the sight out? Even if you use permanent Loctite, you can still tap the sight out, okay? The reason I don't like using a non-permanent or blue Loctite is because over the years, I found that gun chemicals or cleaners tend to dissolve that Loctite, and then stuff starts falling off your gun. So the ones that I use 262 typically for rears, because there's a lot of bearing surface. You don't really need to make it, you know, you don't need to weld it in. We're going to take a little bit more material off of this. Let me get back underneath here so you see what I'm doing. And I want you guys to see that we're not using anything really whiz-bang or fancy. It's the adage, it's the carpenter, not the tools, is pretty true when it comes to gunsmithing. They call me a philosopher too sometimes. Camera guy's laughing over there. That's why he's running the camera though. But he's the wind beneath my wings, though. I just want you to know that. Hang in there, Chet. All right. I'm going to try it one more time. Now, look, I don't mind if we do this 5 times. A properly fit sight's going to stay there forever, and an improperly fit sight's going to look like you're a butcher. So we're going to try not to be a butcher. Let me see if I'm in my here. Yeah, we're good. You can feel that thing go dead hard. Oh, this was tight. We'll give that a shot. Now, it looks like I'm hitting it pretty hard. Typically, I would not want it to be that tight. I want it to be able to bump it for windage with just a relatively easy tap. And I'm saying a relatively easy tap, and I'm talking about like that, okay? But this also is a nylon tip, so it does absorb quite a bit of the impact. So you have to be aware of that. If I were using a regular aluminum punch that would have, it would let it tap over without having to hit it so hard, because obviously it's not getting absorbed from the nylon tip of it. And I'll show you something else. Here's another trick that I do on all these punches. The aluminum will leave residue on the sight. Okay, so it leaves less residue on the sight. I always use my friend the masking tape. And what that does is it just puts a little shim between the sight, and it won't mar the side of the sight. Now, one thing I want to tell you about aluminum, and this is why we use aluminum punches for so long. It first of all, it's softer than sight, and second of all, it doesn't remove bluing from the sight. So it leaves a little bit of aluminum on here, but I don't know if the earth just rotated right or God likes me, but a blue pin gets up underneath it, lifts it off, and it'll completely erase any mark an aluminum punch left. We get sights that are installed by other people, and it really looks like they used a wood chipper to put them in, and they're just dinged and kind of mauled up. And then we'll send the guy a sight that we installed, and he wants to know how we did it where it looks so clean. I don't like having a bunch of dings and dents, especially on front dovetails, that look like somebody drew a burr up on the side. I like it to look like it was machined in the slide. So the techniques that I'm going to teach you today are going to help you to do it that way. All right, so the rear sight's in. It also, our rear sights come with a 16th Allen wrench. And so when I do a fixed sight, I do a nice tight press fit that I can move around so I can adjust the windage. However, I typically don't Loctite that dovetail, because once that Loctite breaks loose, it's not working anyway. So that needs to be accommodated just by the press fit of the sight. So you want a good tight press fit. I strongly recommend that you make it where you could move it side to side with the nylon tip punch, because you can just stick that in your bag. Anytime you need to adjust the sight, you can do it. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put a little bit of lacquer thinner on the sight, and I'm going to look up here for a second. Okay, got an air blower right here. If you don't, you can wipe that off with a cotton swab. All right. Then we're going to take the slide out, and we're going to clean the set screw hole, okay? Now, it's pretty hard to clean that out with a cotton swab, so you could sit there and let it evaporate, but I got air, so I'm going to use it. Have you seen the awesome tools I got around here, man? It's a cool place, man. All right, so we're going to go ahead and put the set screw out. Now, there's two methods. If you absolutely know that this gun is zeroed, and you're never going to want to move that sight, you can fill that hole with Loctite. Now what's going to happen is as you put the set screw in, it's going to act like a piston, and it's going to hydraulic Loctite everywhere, and that sight is not going to move. You're going to have to whale the heck out of it to get it to move. I like to be able to get the screw out, okay? If you do that, or a lot of times you're going to round the Allen wrench off before you get the screw out. So what I do is I'm going to put a small, we call that a dollop in the gunsmithing industry. That's actually 2 dollops. I'm going to go ahead and start the screw, and I'm going to leave about three threads exposed, okay? I'm just going to put a little bit of this on the end of that screw, and I'm just going to let it go around that screw. What I'm trying to do is get it to where it circles the thread, all right? Let it wick in for just a second. And I'm going to go ahead and tighten that up. Now, obviously, I would have shot this gun and zeroed it first, but I'm just going to show you after you get the gun zeroed. That's how I want you to snug that down. And you don't have to put 100 foot-pounds of torque on it. Just good, snug, tight fit will keep it from scooting around. These are cut point set screws, so they kind of bite in just a little bit. We're going to take a Q-tip. These are used. Never mind, I'm just kidding. Okay, so the rear sight's installed. This is my toothbrush. I don't use it to brush my teeth anymore, but it is my toothbrush. And you can see it's cleaned up a few sights before. Actually, the more you use them, the better they are. They get softer and they clean better. Okay, so clean off all the residual Loctite. Okay, so we've got the Gen 4 done. We're going to go ahead and reassemble it. However, before we do that, so the gun doesn't lock itself up and glue it up, you want to make sure that if you got any Loctite on the inside of that slide that you get it out of there. I got a story, but I can't tell anyone because it might incriminate me, so I'm not going to say anything. But needless to say, we had to beat a guy's gun apart at the Nationals one year, so you guys do the math. Okay, so there we go. All right, we've installed Dawson Precision Charger Rear on a Glock Gen 4.